Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm Luchke Styles, and if this is your first time of coming across my channel, I share sewing tutorial videos and pattern drafting right here on my channel. So in today's tutorial, as you can see right here, I'll be sharing with you all a detailed process on how to cut and sew this beautiful gown which you see right here. It has an asymmetrical neckline and also a basque in front, with these gathers also pleated around the waist area. So this is a proper detailed tutorial which I'll be sharing with you all in today's tutorial. And if this sounds like something you're really interested in learning how to do, please continue watching and don't also forget to subscribe to my channel. And without much ado, I'm just going to dive into what we have for today. So here are my sewing materials which I'll be using to achieve that particular gown you saw at the beginning of this tutorial. This fabric, which is a crepe fabric, is about 3 yards. I didn't end up using the entire 3 yards. It has this yellow background with these black prints on it, okay? And for this, my zipper is also golden yellow in color, which I'll be fixing to the back so that we can easily wear our dress. All right, so I have my ruler, my scissors, and the rest of them. So I'm just going to get started now by drafting. So firstly, I'm going to mark a starting line, which I'm going to do by placing my tape at the tip top of my paper, and I just went ahead to mark 1 inch. So those dots I made, I connected them into a straight line using my straight ruler. So on that line, I'm going to label it my shoulder line. So all my measurements I'll be taking vertically will be starting from this line labeled my shoulder line. So I placed my tape under my shoulder line and divided my shoulder into 2 plus half of an inch. Then from that point, I came down by 8 inches, which is my armhole length, and I'm going to connect from my shoulder line down to this 8 inches. Now this way, I'll rule a line across, and that is going to be my chest line. Of course, I'll also go ahead and label. So after that, I'll also come to that my armhole line and get the half or the middle of it, which is 4. Then on my chest line, I divided my bust circumference by 4, which I made a mark right there. So on that 4 inches, I'm meant to come in by half of an inch, okay, which I've done right now, so that I'll be able to create my armhole. So the connection will start from my shoulder line to this half of an inch all the way down to my bust, quarter of my bust circumference. So I created my armhole already, and the next thing is to create my neckline. So for my neck width, I'm going in by 3 inches, and for my neck depth, I'm going in by 2 inches. So I'll first of all create a block form before I'll go ahead and now create a curve or a circle or round neckline, okay? So this is how I do mine. So I'll place my tape above that my shoulder line and mark half of an inch, and I'll slant from that half of an inch I came up by to this other side of my shoulder to create my shoulder slope or slant, okay? So now my tape placed on my shoulder line, I'm going to get my half length of 16 inches. But because I wanted this basque effect to come down a bit, I had to mark 1 inch. I had to add like extra 1 inch. So at that point now, my waistline is going to be 17 inches instead of the actual 16 inches. But if you want to maintain your waistline, it's also okay. So from that point, I marked extra 6 inches, and I'll also rule that out into a straight line. And after ruling out, I'll just label it my basque, okay? So I labeled this other line my waist. Then for this one, I just labeled it my basque. All right, so now we've gotten the essential and important lines. So the next thing is to get the quarter of my waist circumference, which I marked right there, and I connected it to my chest line under my bust circumference, which I now proceeded to mark 1 inch, which is for my stitching or sewing allowance, okay? Now from that my waistline, I came down by half of an inch, okay, and I'm going to connect it into this my allowance just like this, okay? So now from that half of an inch, I'm going to make a straight slant curve from there, that point to that 6 inches right there on that point, okay? So this is for our basque effect in front. I hope it's simple, right? So that is just that, and I'll go ahead now to cut out every other thing in the same way I've drafted. Fixing or imputing your dart is not really necessary for this particular type of gown, okay? So now I'm going to cut out on my fabric, because this part I cut out was for my back part, okay? So my fabric now folded into 2. I started by marking 1 inch from the folded edge of my fabric for my zipper allowance. After marking it, I'll keep this my pattern paper exactly on that 1 inch point which I've made already, and I'm going to go ahead and just pin. All right, so after pinning, I'll come to my waistline. I'll extend that line to my fabric, and I'm going to mark 1 inch, half of an inch this way. So upward, I'm going to mark about 6 inches from that my waistline. Okay, so now using my ruler, I'm going to connect that half of an inch upward this way in a slanting manner, and also repeat the same thing downward. So after this, guys, this is this for the back part of this our dress. Okay, so you're going to cut out every other thing the same way, but when you get to that backs area, you're going to leave about half of an inch, which will be for our joining allowance, okay, to the lower part of our dress. So this is it. After cutting, I'll go ahead now and remove these pins I have on my paper and separate them from my fabric before I'll move on to my pattern paper to finish up the alteration for a symmetric neckline. So from my shoulder, I'm going to consider how deep I want my neckline to be, which is 6 inches. I marked it right there, and I connected this into a straight line. So from my armhole, I came in by about 1 inch right there at that point. So now I'll move to the other part of my shoulder, and I'm going to connect from that my shoulder into that 1 inch I came in by on my armhole, as you can see right here. So now this other side, I'm actually going to subtract about half of an inch from that my shoulder, because I want this to be a bit away from my neck. Okay, so now from that point, using my curve rule, I'm now going to connect, and all of these lines and these points will meet exactly on that point. Okay, so you can see what I've done here so far. Then you go ahead now and cut out. So guys, this is what I have, and I'm going to cut out on my fabric at this point. So while cutting out on your fabric, you don't have to fold, you just have to spread out your fabric. Just spread it out and pin this all around, which I've done right here. Okay, so I didn't fold, I just spread out everything and just placed my pattern paper on it. And I forgot to tell you guys initially that of course this my pattern paper was folded into two. So you can see that on the basque area, I added half of an inch for joining allowance to the lower part of our gown. Then to the sides, I'm not going to add any allowance because I already did this while I was drafting on my pattern paper. On this neckline area, on this part, you're meant to also add half of an inch around for your joining with your facing. Okay, so after cutting, this is what I had on my fabric. So the next thing I want to cut out is for my facing. So I'm just simply going to place the upper part of this my pattern paper on my fabric, spread out this way, and I'm going to trace this all around. So this is just for my facing. Your facing is not really meant to get up to the actual length of your top. Okay, so I cut out my facing for the front part of my gown, and I'm going to do the same thing for the back part of my gown. So for this back part of my gown, you're meant to fold. Okay, then you trace out the neckline and go down from the neckline by about 3 inches and trace it all around. So just fold into two and get all of that. Okay, so now this is what I have. But for this particular one, I want to fix my zipper first before I proceed to adding my facing. Okay, so that you learn how to achieve a very neat finishing. Okay, to cover up your zipper. So I marked my zipper allowance of 1 inch, which I just marked right there, and then I started pinning my zip on that 1 inch. So you are going to stitch at both sides of your zipper, and after stitching, this is what I have. So you can take up your zipper higher a little bit if you don't want this long something at the end of the day in your clothes. Okay, so I opened up my zipper this way, and I made sure that my zipper is relaxing on top of my dress, just this way. Then I used my fabric to place on top. On that neckline area, I will stitch just as I'm illustrating right here. So I will stitch the neckline area, and when I get to that zipper area, I'm going to stitch on top of that my zipper. So when you open your zipper, make sure that that part of your zipper, which is the tips of your zipper, is on top of your fabric. Okay, so just as mine is, and you're going to stitch around the neckline and then on top of your zipper, just as I'm illustrating here. Okay, so for the front part of our dress, I'm also going to place my facing on top of it this way, and I'll pin this all around. Then on the neckline area, I am going to stitch as well. So I'm not going to stitch the armhole area, just the neckline area, okay? The neckline and that other part, which is the shoulder. All right, so now after that, this is it for the back part, and I've stitched that down. And I'm going to cut off those excess zipper which I have at the top part. So I am illustrating to you all the stitches I've made for you all to see. Then I cut off the excess zipper allowance which I have right here. So now I'm going to flip this now to the right side for you all to see a very perfect and neat finish. So automatically my facing will be covering the upper part of that my zipper. Okay, so it's going to give you a very neat and decent look. Okay, so now you can go ahead and trim off if you're finding it a bit difficult to turn this to your right side. And after turning this over, you go ahead and iron. So guys, this is what I have. So you can see how neat this is properly covering. I'm yet to actually iron this as well. All right, so now for the front part, this is it, and I'm going to just flip this to the wrong side. Okay, so by the time I flip this to the wrong side, you see what I have. Definitely a neat finishing at the end of the day. So it's really important to do this that way. Okay, so when I'm done with this wasn't relaxing, because obviously it's not meant to relax until you iron. And I'm also going to iron in my hemming gum in between my facing and my actual fabric so that it can stick at a place. Okay, so I'll iron my hemming gum to this, and after that I went ahead to weave, which I've done right here already, and it sticked perfectly to my dress, as you can see right here. Okay, so on that neckline area I ironed my hemming gum properly. So this is the right side, and I'm going to start joining the front and the back part of this upper part of our gown. And I also went ahead to weave the facing. So I'm going to get the two shoulders and make sure I pin them together this way. So don't forget that by the time you reduce half of an inch from the front part of your shoulder of your dress, you're meant to do the same thing for the back part. Please, I would have said this initially. All right, so I'm going to join on the shoulder area and also join the two sides as well. So I'm pinning first of all before I go ahead to join. Okay, so you can see at that point on that shoulder I reduced the back part as well by half of an inch, just the same way I did for the front. Okay, so I've joined the shoulder and also the sides of this my gown, and this is what I have. So I measured it out for you all to see. I joined using just 1 inch. All right, so back to this my top. After joining, I'll flip this to the right side so you can see what we have. We are done with the upper part. That is how simple this particular dress is. So we'll move over to the lower part of our gown. So I've already gone ahead to cut out this piece, and for the length of my gown is 41 inches. I subtracted my half length from it to get the lower part of my skirt. So right here the lower part is 20 something inches. Sorry, I can't really remember. So for the width or the wideness or the part I'll be gathering, I have about 2.5 yards of fabric, which you can see me measuring out right here. So I measured out 2 yards, and this is almost half of an inch. So right here is 2.5 inches. Okay, so I now folded this piece into 2 equal parts, and I'm going to just notch the middle or the midpoint. Okay, so by the time I notch, I'll get the upper part of this my gown, and I'm also going to get the middle of it and notch as well. All right, so that your zipper part at the back, you're not meant to stitch it up entirely to the end for the fixing of this gather effect we have on the lower part of our gown. So I notched the middle, and I'm going to get that piece for our gathers and also pin the middle part of it to the middle part of this our blouse. So by the time I pin it right there, I'll get the other end of this other piece and pin it to the back exactly on that zipper part where it stops. Okay, so you can see what I have. So pin it on that part as well. So after pinning this, all these excesses I have right here, I'm going to pleat it all the way around this other side of my gown. So in order to achieve an equal effect, I also folded it into two to get the middle, and I'm just going to get that notch part and pin it to the side joining of the front and back part of this my gown, the upper part of my gown, so that we don't have the front more gathered than the back. Okay, so this is just all for one part, one side of this our gown. Okay, so for the other side I'll also repeat the same thing. So after doing all of that, I have to stitch for one side first before I stitch for the other side. So as you can see, I'm already arranging this and I'm going to start pleating. So you can go ahead and do very tiny pleats, like very tiny. If you want yours to be bold, it's okay, but I think the more tinier, the beautiful and more pretty the dress will turn out. Okay, so I will advise you to take your time and do tiny pleats on this. So I'm going to pleat from the center to the back for one side and also repeat the same thing for the other side. Okay, so by the time you pleat, which is just what I'm trying to show you right here, if you flip it to the front part, this is what you're going to have. So I'm going to do this entirely, and this is what I have right here. So for your pleats, if you feel like you want to use more than 2.5 yards for your pleats, is okay. Okay, so now the next thing is to stitch up the entire back of this our dress by bringing in that zipper part, which is still open this way. I am going to stitch all the way from that my zip to the ends of this my gown, and I'm also going to hem. So I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and I believe that is like one of the simplest dresses you can ever make. So thank you all so much for watching. If you've come this far and you're here to subscribe, please kindly do so. I'll see you all in my next one. Bye.